Okay, hey everyone. Welcome to week 4 impression management. We start talking about a lot of the things that we've been alluding to thus far. We've used terminology such as deception. We've talked about catfish in our discussions. And so as we're moving forward, just think about as we're talking about impression management, there are different nuances, and we see that a lot with the readings that we have for this week. And this week in particular, we cover a larger spectrum of readings. So, for instance, the Allison article talks about online romantic dating, and then the Schmidt and Cohen start talking about WikiLeaks and things like that. So, let's just start from the top and get into some of the ideas and concepts that we talk about, just so that we're all on the same page and we understand what we should be talking about. So, the Davison Yerkson 2014 article talks about this idea of context collapse and collusion. I'll sort of define and conceptualize those for you. But the main idea is that our context, especially within mediated communication, sometimes collapse. They can collapse by default, they can collapse on purpose, but a lot of times they can also collapse by surprise. And so we see this a lot. We see our networks, the different elements that play into that, fold on top of itself, and now everyone knows everything about everything that we do or say. And we see a lot of this with tagging of photos, or we see status updates or new relationship statuses. Ooh, exciting times, right? In a lot of these circumstances, when we talk about context collusion, collusion is this idea that we are purposefully bringing together various social situations and structures. So we are making a public decree to our friends and family, hey, me and this person are in a relationship, or hey, I'm moving to California for a new job, whatever it might be. The collusion is us intentionally, very purposefully doing it to make those worlds come together as one. And so I'm sure you can think of, a variety of reasons why you might do that. You might do that maybe preemptively so that you're the owner and you control the information that's being exposed out to people. Or you might do it because maybe you have pressures from family or friends to reveal some sort of information. Now, the collision, and I think about this in terms of the definitions of them to understand which is which, collusion versus collision. Collisions, I think of car accidents, because sometimes in a lot of situations they're unpredictable, and when they happen, everything just crashes on top of each other, and here we are trying to deal with the mess that sometimes comes from it. So collusion, we're making a point. We're going to say, hey, me and this significant other, we're in a relationship now, here you go world. Those two social networks start to overlap. With collisions, things just happen. You get tagged in a photo with another partner, even though you're supposed to be in a monogamous relationship. Oh crap, what do I do now, right? And we see a lot of this sort of as we look into the romantic realm with the Ellison article, where we talk about different types of misrepresentation. When we're trying to control our impressions, we're trying to manage our impressions, the main goal for that is usually trying to portray ourselves in a way that we perceive to be most valuable for whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. So LinkedIn, for instance, taking a step away from the Ellison article, LinkedIn, we want to control the way that future employers and maybe even current employers see us. We go through recruiters, we find different tactics, how to frame and really talk about our skills and our abilities and our endorsements, right? Now, moving back to the romantic realm, what we do is sometimes we may misrepresent or mischaracterize some of our features, right? And we know that with online dating websites and profiles, we have different parameters that are set. I can look for someone who is a white male, 25 to 30, 6'1", 195 pounds, right? We can set all these parameters. What we do see, and what the Allison article talks about, is this notion that sometimes people will work their way and manipulate the filters so that they are put into a more advantageous group. So think about that. I am 42 years old. I want to be with people who want a 39-year-old. So all of a sudden I might misrepresent certain information. We usually call that deceit, right? And in a lot of these situations, there might be some sort of distorted perception as to how you view yourself or how you want to be viewed. We talk again about this idealized version of the current self. And what we think about is this idea that we need to be able to share information to specific types of audiences. I want to share this idealized representation to potential romantic partners, or I want to give a representation that is very advantageous for my friends and family. And we talk about a term or a phrase, the lowest common denominator, right? We want to share information that is appropriate for all members of our network. So whether it's my grandmother checking in on me, or it is a younger cousin or nephew, I want to make sure that the broad information that I'm putting out there fits that lowest common denominator. Okay, so think about that in terms of maybe what you do when you're controlling your online image. You're trying to maintain a certain identity. And then as we move to the Schmidt and Cohen article, we talk about sort of bigger picture ideas as to how impression management might be changing. The first of which is this notion that online, as much as we want to control our individualized self, we do have these hidden people from time to time, right? We have these individuals who are anonymous, they're untraceable, they're unverified, yet they are contributing to our ideas. My example with this is the website Rate My Professor. They're anonymous users, okay? They go on and they say, oh, Professor Blight's terrible. He sucks, he doesn't care anything about me, he's the worst, okay? Now what they don't have is context, right? It might be a student who is disgruntled because of a grade, but we can also see that on the flip side of it. The example that I give, and this sort of relates back to the idea that Schmidt and Cohen say police officers will have a rating system. So people will be able to say, Officer Johnson, great officer, really cares about his or her community. They're awesome. 5 out of 5, right? Very Yelp style review. The issue with this is that there's a lot of ambiguity what each star actually means or represents. My example is I like to go out to eat. I like restaurants. My wife and I try to explore new places as much as possible. And as I was going through reviews of a restaurant, which will remain nameless for the sake of this video, I came across sort of an outlier. It was 4 or 5 stars. Oh, this restaurant's great. The service could be a little bit better, but overall it was a great experience. I came across one which read something to the effect of, I've never been so humiliated in my life. What a terrible restaurant. They don't even care about any of their customers. The owner even made some racist comments toward me, some derogatory terms in my direction. 2 out of 5. What in the world would that restaurant have to do? Attempted murder to get 1 out of 5, right? So again, we think about the ambiguity with these stars. Yes, ratings help us to maybe conceptualize and make sense of the world around us. But if we don't know what a 2 means in comparison to a 3 to a 4, a 4 to a 5, then there are a lot of struggles as to how we maintain some sort of objective criteria, right? And so with that, we want to look at this idea of companies that even manage online reputations. We saw that with the banking situation after Wall Street crashes, 2008. Banks are hiring these online reputation companies to help reinstate the value that they bring to potential customers. Everyone's freaking out. All of our money is disappearing. What do we do? Well, this bank is saying, okay, let's hire some people to control our identity. And in a lot of these situations, with a first world issue, that is a positive solution. But when we go to impression management to maybe a third world or developing countries, we see that they simply don't have the infrastructure for internet. We saw recently, within the past 2 weeks, an article with SpaceX and Elon Musk talking about launching 4,000 satellites to provide internet access to people in lower income areas, to developing countries, to third world countries, to give them a voice, to give them power, right? And hopefully that empowerment will help with their education, their health, and all of that. With that, so the good is we'll have access to technology. Awesome. People will be able to maybe find out information about their health, safe sex practices, ways to cook and prepare food that it gets rid of the diseases, okay? But we also have the other end of that where we could have a political revolution in place. So think about WikiLeaks, right? We start to expose all this information that was private in areas that we have great sources of infrastructure and information. We have digitized records of everything, okay? People, places, events, people at the events that invited the people, but the people couldn't make it because they were at another event. We have all this digitized information. What happens when we start to catalog and record that information in developing countries where it wasn't there in the first place? What happens when I'm in a third world country and a tyrant ruler comes, does something terrible to me, or maybe sends a representative of his or hers to put me down, to control me, to shut me up because I have political information that would absolutely ravage the political campaign for re-election? Well, impression management, we get to a point where users have the power to provide information to other individuals and then move forward past that. So as we're talking about these different topics, we're talking about online dating, or we're talking about managing our own personal identity on LinkedIn, just think about the ways that maybe you use impression management techniques what affordances you're given. So is it easy for you to maintain it because you have control of your LinkedIn profile, or maybe you have very high privacy settings? And then past that, what about the people in your life? What about the people maybe if you have a career aspiration, you want to be a chief marketing officer? What do people in those positions do? So sort of think about it on a smaller scale, the micro scale, but then also on the macro scale. How is it that these individuals are maintaining and controlling their images? And as we talk about this, hopefully we have fun with it. I inevitably will hear something about catfish, so when that comes up, we'll just sort of nod and smile. Shout out to Neil Schulman for his awesome television show and movie. But if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please let me know. I think this is one of the weeks where we have a variety of readings, and it'll be enjoyable for everyone. So until then, I'll talk to you soon.